preparation for my UDO Super 6 versus the Jupiter 6 video, I thought I'd better acquaint myself with the Jupiter 6, and while I'm doing that, I thought I might as well demo it as a synth on its own, because it's worth quite a lot of money. So if you're looking at buying one, what exactly does it do? I've not seen too many demos of it. Now, one of these will set you back around £4,000. It depends on what condition they're in, who else is in the market at the time, but the prices of these things are skyrocketing. It's the baby sister of the absolutely stunningly, amazingly legendary Jupiter 8, which still, I'm not quite sure why it's so legendary. It was on loads and loads of tracks, but they're worth at least $10,000, $20,000 you see them going for these days. So this could perhaps be the budget version of the Jupiter 8, but a budget synth, £4,000, 40-year-old, is it really worth it for the sort of money that could buy you a MacBook Pro plus an audio interface, a few soft synths, some editing software and all sorts of things, so you could buy a whole studio for what one of these costs. So this one's on loan, and the first thing you notice about this is how heavy it is, and quite how sort of, although it's heavy, it feels a little bit flimsy. Everything feels a bit scratchy. I don't know if the microphone's picking any of that up, but sort of really does remind me of a 106 actually. After I've been playing with the Super 6, this just feels really sort of flimsy and not well put together. These knobs are quite horrible. Quite loose, but they're just really weird little knobs. But you know, all in all, it does feel like some sort of 40-year-old bit of kit. Just feels like an old thing. Okay, so, but not an old sexy thing, it just feels like an old thing. Sorry Tez, I know this is your synth, but yeah, And actually the travel isn't that great. That's, what's that, about 5 centimeters or something? So you're not even getting that finer control. If you look at the Roland Boutiques that people don't like because they're far too small, actually the play on this isn't much different, although they are a bit wider spaced. On the back, we've got MIDI in and MIDI out, old school 5-pin DIN obviously. We've got a memory protect switch and a tape load and save. Then we've got some external controls. We've got a clock in, patch shift, pedal hold, and VC8 and VCF CV ins, headphone output, and a main output with high, medium or low levels, plus an XLR output as well. Let's just crack on, shall we, and just see what we've got on the front panel. We've got a single LFO up here, but we've got a secondary one down there, just like the Super 6. We've got VCO1, VCO2, we've got sync, and we've got cross mod. We've got a blend between VCO1 and VCO2, no independent levels. We've got a VCF that's got a high pass, a low pass, and a band pass mode. And we've got 2 separate envelopes, both with key tracking. And down on the bottom here, we've got really, really basic arpeggio. We can assign various modes to the keys. Interestingly, in the center here, we've got this key mode and panel mode, and that means we can split this between 2 and 4 or 4 and 2. So it's actually a multi-timbral synth. Very basic because we've only got 6 voices, but it is there. And obviously, this is where we access all the patches. And down on the bottom left, we've got the sort of performance center, as it were, with the pitch bend. And the mod wheel doesn't push forward. All I'm doing when I'm doing that is trying to snap the controller. So I won't touch that. That's how you access the modulation. So shall we crack on then and start off by taking a listen to the oscillators? And I thought I'd just go through this like I would with a synth review, just go through the features one at a time and see what we think. And the first thing you notice are these range knobs. So to get us in tune, we've got a bit of play that's indicated in these, I think I can only call them petals. And then you move up, is that semitones? And then when you've got a bit of play in it again, you're back in tune. So between the petals is where you're tuned by semitone. Let's try VCO2. So that's actually quite well in tune. It does seem to go in and out of tune a little bit in this synth, and every now and then I've got to just press tune and it gets it back in, but that's pretty close there. And you'll see there we've got a low frequency mode for VCO2. which we can use for the cross mod. But I'm not sure there's anywhere else you can use VCO2 as an LFO. So we do have a third LFO in VCO2, but I don't think it's can modulate anything else. But let's go back to the actual oscillators themselves, the sound of them. So VCO1. Triangle, it's quite beefy that. And that's got a bit of weight to it as well, hasn't it? Got to say, it sounds a lot better playing it this morning than it did playing it last night after playing the Super 6, which sort of blew it away on every level, but not side by side, just in the amount of functions on it. That sounds nice and fat, that. And then we've got pulse. Change the width over here through 0. We can modulate that with the LFO or the envelope. We've also got a delay on that LFO, but that doesn't delay PWM. It's not doing that, is it? But if we use the LFO to modulate the tuning, let's take that down, we get the delay. And that can modulate VCO1 or VCO2 or both of them. And back to VCO1, we've got a square as well. Yeah, that's got a bit of beef as well. On VCO2 we're similar, but we've got noise rather than the square. Let's have a listen to that. Noise. The pulse on VCO2 is modulated by the same parameters or the same knobs as VCO1, so you can't have PWM on one pulse and not on the other unless you're going to use the square, but you can't sort of have one pulse thin and left there and one modulating. It's either both or nothing. Through 0. So there we've got a sawtooth and the pulse. So let's take a look at the oscilloscope and run through the wave shapes quickly, shall we? Here's VCO1, triangle, sine, pulse, goes through 0, then the square, which is just identical to the pulse. Just trying a few combinations. So you can have any combination you want except for anything with the square and the pulse together. Now over to VCO2, which is generally the same. Let's add the noise. And you can do any combination you'd expect with that. So let's have a little go at the sync, shall we? Let's have a go with syncing 2 with 1 first. And I'll just stick some envelope on that, a little attack and decay. Yeah, it's really nice and musical sounding, isn't it? Let's try it the other way around. So syncing 1 with 2. Trying to modulate the pitch of both of them at the same time. So, as you might expect, you can't sync both waves with each other at the same time. So let's take a look at the Crossmod now, and at audio rates this is pretty abysmal. So here it is. As I was saying, let's take sync off though. That's a bit better. So I'm not instantly finding nice little things I can do with it. I'm sure there's stuff in there. And it gives that sort of, I don't know, that sort of fizzy feel, but so there are some nice-ish bits, but I don't know, it just doesn't feel very nice. It doesn't go up very high. You feel like you should be able to push it at least double the length. Anyway, VCO1 can be modulated by VCO2 as an LFO, as we saw earlier. And the amount of Crossmod can be modulated using envelope 1. I've got about an inverse there. So there are things in there, aren't there? Let's try that in audio rates. It's a bit gritty to say the least, isn't it? Let's try it on another wave. So I suppose there's risers and stuff and nice effects you can do with that. Let's increase the attack. Let's maybe put it into bandpass mode. Maybe let's not put it into bandpass mode. So not bad. Let's modulate the VCF with the envelope as well and put it into bandpass this time. So I suppose there are some uses for it. That sound at the end was quite nice. Let's take... Let's try that in unison mode. It's quite a nice sound, that. Hey, that's a bigger sound, isn't it? So is this the world's first ever trance synth? Interesting. But I'm pulling out things here that, you know, the more you play with it, the more you can tease out of it. I couldn't, you know, envisage last night when I first got my hands on this, being able to do something sort of that fat sounding. Pretty good, that, isn't it? Let's try that without the cross mod. The cross mod's not adding much though, is it? Still quite nice, but yeah, the cross mod, a little bit wishy-washy. Let's move over to the filter then, shall we? Starting off with a simple sawtooth. You realise it's not very bright there, looking at that frequency analysis. It's quite a dull sounding filter, isn't it? So let's add 50% resonance. It's stepping there, and that sounds like quantized stepping rather than it popping out the harmonics. And it's bottoming out there at around 50 to 60 hertz, so we're not getting that really, really bassy rumbles that you get from some. Let's put the resonance up to full. We're not getting self-oscillation. It's a very, very well-behaved filter, isn't it? Let's add the envelope. Now you can hear it's pulling out the harmonics. So it's nice sounding. It reminds me a little bit of the Juno 2, where you just don't get those really aggressive tones from it. Let's try a little bit of high pass, see what we get on that. So the resonance is still there on high pass mode and band pass. So yeah, it's useful. So they're two really useful modes, the high pass and the band pass. Then we've got envelope, LFO or keyboard as modulation sources. We've got envelope 1 or envelope 2, but not both. That would have been interesting. So yeah, filter, it's okay. Let's try something a little bit acidy, shall we? And you can hear it's quite snappy, that, isn't it? We're getting sort of clicks and pops. Let's try and do a kick with it. If you can do it, it's not easy. You can hear a couple popping out there. Maybe it's just that it needs a little bit of TLC. But not going into self-oscillation, it's actually difficult to do that, so. Yeah, filter's okay, but it's not got the grit and the dirt and the power, really, that I suppose we sort of expect these days. So moving over to the envelopes, there's nothing really to write home about here. You've heard them being snappy, and we heard them being quite long when we were doing the cross mod. We've got inverse polarity, and that's on envelope 1, not on envelope 2, but they've both got a key tracking mode as well, so you can have shorter notes at the top of the keyboard than you get at the bottom. Pretty much what you might expect. So let's take a look at this blue section down here, arpeggio, assign and glide. Let's try a little bit of portamento. So that's portamento mode, and glissando mode. You can hear it's going up the keyboard as if you're playing every note. That's an interesting effect. And we don't have different modes, we don't have like a legato mode, it just does it on every note you press, so. Let's put it into solo. So it's doing it whether the notes overlap or they don't. Then let's have a look at the arpeggio, and it's really super simple. We've got up, we've got down, and we've got a 4-octave range. So if we look at up, got a hold. Now up and down, and we have to do this, don't we? Then we've got these assign modes here, so we're currently in solo mode, otherwise known as mono mode. Then we've got unison, and some nice unison detune as well. Although they do sound pretty detuned when they're on 0. That's quite nice, and that does give us those big leads. Then we've got 2 different poly modes. The different poly modes do different things to the release. Poly mode 1 will blend from one to the other. And that just allows all the voices to play to the very end of their release. Poly mode 2, on the other hand, cuts off the last note played, so. But that's actually really useful, because you don't get this. Which means you can still have those chords that have got the really nice long release, but you don't get all that muddiness. And interestingly, that's exactly the way it works on the Super 6 as well. And now we've got this little orange panel in the middle, that's the key mode and the panel mode. And this is where we've basically got a multi-timbral synth. So we're playing whole at the minute, so it's playing the one tone across the keyboard, but we can split it 4 notes on the left, 2 notes on the right, or 2 notes on the left, 4 notes on the right. So pretty impressive, I suppose, in that it is a multi-timbral synth. Let's put it into split 2/4 mode. So we've got 2 on the left, 4 on the right, so bass on the left, pads on the right. So on the lower one, I'm going to load in F2, that's a bass sound. And on the upper one, I'm going to bring in F1, that's the pad. I'm going to put it in poly 2 mode so the chords don't merge into each other. It's got a really long release on that, and we've got a balance over here, so we can balance it. We've only got a single mono out. We're not getting any bass there at all, and now we won't get any pad or very little. When we're in upper mode, we're editing the upper sound, and when we're in lower mode, we're editing the lower sound. So we're in lower mode. Let's edit that. Let's just do something mad with the filter. If we go to the upper one, it won't have changed. And now we're editing the upper one. And there, we're editing the lower one. But it's only got a mono out, so you can't put effects on the different voices. But I suppose having the 2 voices in 1980, whatever, was cutting edge enough. So finally, I think this brings me round to this little section on the bottom left, which is the sort of performance section. And this is more flexible than we tend to get on synths these days, but we do have on synths these days lots of modulation slots, which we don't get on this. The only synth that comes close to what we've got down here that I've played with recently at least is the Super 6. Again, hence me gonna put them together. But let's just take a quick look. Let's put Simple Sound on. That's quite nice, that's one I made earlier. That's me emulating the Prophet 5 on this. That's patch 111, the first one that you get on the Prophet 5, to see if it could sound as warm, and not really, no. Anyway, let's move back down to here again. We're not hearing anything on the bender, obviously because both of these are switched down. Turn the VCO up. We need to bring in VCO 1. VCO2. There's no VCO2 playing on this. Let's mix it in. Sort of what you expect, isn't it? VCF. Got wide mode as well, and wide mode just increases the modulation range. Now the mod wheel doesn't do this like you'd expect on most Rolands, or later Rolands I suppose, but we've got a mod button. And there we're using this separate LFO, and this has got a delay, it's called rise here. So we're only getting a really small amount of really vibrato on the VCO. It's not really modulating it by any great degree. As the VCF, we're getting quite a lot of range. But the wide button doesn't affect that. And it's nice that we've got a completely separate independent LFO. So we've got LFO2, LFO1, and we've got VCO2 for the LFOs. But again, you haven't got lots of modulation slots. You can't do much with them. I don't think there's anything else I can do with LFO2 on this. I have had a look. So LFO2 is restricted to this section. VCO2 LFO3, as it were, is restricted just to these knobs here. So, you know, we are really restricted in what we can do with this compared to more modern synths. So what's my final take on this? It's all right. That's about it really. It's an okay synth. It doesn't jump out. It's got nothing in here that you can't really do on other synths. You know, there's nothing that really jumps out at you as a nice function that's unique and that you need to get the Jupiter 6 in order to get that. There may be something here and there, really small idiosyncrasies that other people know about and they like, but you know, as far as if this landed on my desk as a brand new synth and someone said it's going to cost you £4,000, you'd just kick it out straight away. If they said it's a brand new synth, 6-voice VCO with a couple of envelopes, a couple of LFOs, for £500, you'd be, you know, there is the DeepMind, whatever you think of Behringer, this, you know, even £500, you'd be sort of questioning it. So it's okay, it's a vintage synth, it's not my favourite synth, it's not often I get a synth that I don't really find something that I really like. Juno 2, for example, it's got the Hoover sounds and it can do some really beautiful pads and things, and it's got the chorus. There's no effects on this whatsoever, so maybe she'll just stick it through an effect or two. That's cheating really, isn't it? Because that'll make anything sound brilliant. It's the Specular Tempus. Anyway, while I've had this, I have to admit I wasn't overly keen on it at first, which I think has come through blatantly, obviously, in this video, but it's really grown on me actually. I described it to someone as having the charm of your grandfather's best friend. A nice old chap, great to have around, a comforting presence, and I'll be sad to see him go, but not sad enough to spend £4,000 to keep him here. But I can understand why someone might. So, thanks for watching, and if you did enjoy that, please think about subscribing, ringing that bell, and maybe joining me over on my Patreon channel, where I've got hours and hours worth of tutorials how to get the most out of your synth. So, see you soon.